Take 3 Gen Xers, give them a topic about music, movies, pop culture, or whatever, and how it relates to them growing up in the 70s and 80s as part of Generation X. Add one person from another generation to see if there's any common ground, and you've got Solve for Gen X, starting now. I hear dogs barking. Do you hear my dogs barking upstairs?
I heard.
That's because we're in a soundproof booth.
Yeah.
Solve for Gen X.
It was the age of parachute pants.
Skinny ties, neon headbands.
We rode our bikes, clothes, helmet free.
A nicotine from a vending machine.
Decades, pastimes, memories, and master song. Solve for Gen X. Solve for Gen X. Solve for Gen X. Solve for Gen X. Kids today. They sure do seem to spend a lot of time on their gaming devices. I'm not going to read that whole thing again. We're doing low-tech fun again today on Solve for Gen X.
We just had too much.
Yeah.
So, Ashley, what do you got?
Okay, so, basically everything the two of you have said, to some extent, I've got similar things. But the first thing I'll start with, because this didn't really get mentioned by either of y'all, is Barbies. Also very important in this year. This last year was such a huge thing, and we played Barbies so much for so long. We could play Barbies for 5 hours at a time, really extended, long. And we had a babysitter. We had plenty of Barbies. But then we had a babysitter who gave us all of her old Barbies. And one of the things she gave us was an airplane. It was a carrying case for the Barbies, but also you opened it up and it looked like an airplane. We always wanted a Barbie dream house. Did
you ever get a Barbie dream house?
Not from my parents or Santa Claus, but my first Christmas that I spent with my, at the time, boyfriend, Nate Starkey, he gave me a Barbie dream house because he knew how much I wanted one my whole growing up. It was really sweet.
That's really sweet.
It was very sweet. I think we gave it away to a child at some point, but it was a very sweet gesture and sweet thing to do. Yes, we played so much Barbies, and we would incorporate Barbies into anything we were doing. So, for example, if we had a Western Barbie, which I don't know if y'all knew of her, but basically you would push her back and she would wink, and she was dressed Western style. And we would play Juice Newton records and then have her up there singing the Juice Newton song. And then we'd have other Barbies singing to the Grease soundtrack. Or we would go downstairs. My sister had a Barbie car. We would drive the car downstairs to the living room and watch Price is Right and pretend that our Barbies were on the Price is Right. They would be like, okay, this one's going to be that lady who goes up, and they would be doing we're on Price is Right. And then we get so just play out Price is Right. So we would combine lots of things, and then otherwise it was just very soapy, very dramatic. We had one Ken, which
oh boy,
Rooster in the Hen House, gonna cause some problems.
How many Barbies did you have?
We probably at any given point had the most we probably ever had was maybe 10, and that was, and some of them were old, and we had a Donnie and Marie doll, and so that's between me and my sister. So we each had, and then you'd keep. It's not like you'd get a new one and then you'd throw out an old one. So you might get a new Barbie every year or something. We always asked for Barbie stuff. My sister had a Barbie dog. She had the horse. She had the car. We were so into it. And the, let's see, what was the, and so I don't know if you saw the Barbie movie, but in the Barbie movie, there's Weird Barbie, the one with the very real. We had a Barbie who had, a neighbor had cut her hair and cut it all crazy, so we, there's a story for her that she had a mental breakdown, and and everyone would try to be she's freaking me out. And there was our Marie doll. At one point I was absent-mindedly holding the Marie doll while probably watching Donnie and Marie show, and was just gnawing on the hand. And then I told my sister that our dog Pooch did it. And then we made Marie, she was very angry because of her mangled hand, she would be like, this hand, and just like very dramatic monologues, and a lot of like intrigue and romance, and like, I can't take this job anymore. I'm quitting. And they're like, how are you going to pay for your apartment? I don't care. I'll find a way. Like so many dramas, high drama.
Like what is the age that you aged out of Barbie?
Probably late. I mean, it was maybe 12. Like, it was like middle school. We were still playing.
That's typical? Is that typical? I have no idea.
That feels a little late to me. Like, I think partly for me, I had a sister who was a year behind me in school. And so she, when I'm getting into middle school, she's still in elementary. It just feels like once you get into middle school, Barbies are probably phasing out. And it was maybe, I was not crazy late, but it was like on the late end, I think. But we loved doing it. Like, there was like no end to how much fun it was. Like, it was so much fun.
To me, it's like same thing with me, like with stuffed animals. Like, there's a certain age where it's like, I'm not going to, this isn't something I would tell anyone I'm playing with my stuffed animals. Like, but I still kind of have fun doing it.
Oh, I would still have fun, but I definitely was feeling like, okay, I gotta stop this. It's time to move on.
It's kind of like me with puppets. I kind of leaned the other way.
I tried to look this up once because I don't know when we talked about this before, but I had like the knockoff Barbie. Like, my grandmother had them. So when I would go to her house as a young kid, I would play with them. And they were like very Colorado-centric.
Oh, that's
like,
funny.
Like mountain hippie kind of Barbies. Not even hippie, more like mountain Christian Barbies. Okay. Like wholesome, like we're going on a hike and think about God up in the mountains kind of Barbies.
We would go to my grandmother's house, and she had kept my Aunt Sally, who's like the youngest of my dad's family, had kept all of her Barbies. So from the very first Barbies. And so we would have to be like very careful how we played with them, but we were allowed to play with them. And that felt like the things that they had, the way they were kept together, the little coats and the little accessories and gloves and shoes.
Had she kept them like vintage, like just really good condition? And did you notice the difference between the quality of what you had and maybe those original ones? Or was there no difference really?
They were definitely had been played with, so they weren't like in pristine mint condition, but they were in very good condition. And like the main thing was things like the hairstyle. Like the Barbies we had almost all had at least shoulder length hair, and a lot of them had like really long hair. And these would have these like updos, and their faces were a little different. They were a little more like I don't know. There was just something that happened. Like, they started to look more like Cheryl Tiegs. And before that, like in the 50s, they looked more like perky faced. I don't know how to say it. Like Marilyn Monroe-ish. Like a little more those kind of lips and stuff. And then they had like a Skipper doll, which was like the kid sister of Barbie, like flat chested. And we were always like, what is this? And like, but their clothes were so exciting because it was like the Barbie clothes were like contemporary clothes. These were like poodle skirts and like tulle dresses and like so it felt so special to play with them because it was like, oh my gosh, this is like from another. We're not only in this imaginary world, but this is like from another era. Also, though, my grandmother we would have to play a little bit differently when we played with them because we knew she might hear us and some of our scandals that would come up would not be to her liking. Yeah. Also at my grandmother's house, a low-tech thing we would do with my cousins. So we had two girl cousins that were the same age as me and my sister. And we would listen to, they had the Disney long-playing record of Cinderella. And it had a book that went along with it, and you would turn the page and follow along, and it was like on the record you would listen, and we would sit. It was one of our favorite things to do. We would just literally sit in front of the record player, which was in this hallway, and we would have the big book, and then Gus would always tell you to turn the page, and he would go goo 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 goo, and that's your signal to turn the page. And so we'd have to take turns turning the page, but it was the most fun to us. The other thing we would do there. Because, you would bring toys with you to your grandparents' house, but you wouldn't have, like, your toy stash. You'd have a toy or two.
Yeah.
We would write plays. And by we, I mean me. and I would direct them. And so so it would be things like the first Christmas, but then we would modernize it. So it's like, there's no room at the Days Inn. And then like my grandparents were like Baptist, non-drinkers, like very hardcore Baptists. No, you could dance, but no, none of that. And so I would have like a bar. There's like people in the bar at the hotel being like, "Get out of here, you guys. There's no room. Let's keep drinking." My grandmother just fully scandalized. We would charge tickets. The entire family would be furious, would be like, "Ugh, we have to come and watch this." Like outwardly to us would say this. We would make tickets. We would keep like a little box that had all of our tickets and change and the scripts, which my aunt kept and has sent to me. I have them somewhere. Cool. I think she sent them to me. And then we would use stuffed animals to fill out the characters. We would do dance numbers. We would do, and none of them, I mean, Hayden was into it. My cousin Shay was kind of into it. My cousin Beth was really not into it, but I would make her do it. Always, like, right before we were going to perform it, someone, usually Beth, would be like, "I don't want to do it." And I'd be like, "But you've got to. We've worked so hard, and everyone's waiting to see it." Like, no one wanted to go. We've toiled over this retelling, this modern retelling. And then at home, we would ride bikes. We had the construction, so we had like hills and stuff like that. We would roller skate in our neighborhood, like just roller skate around. Jump rope, like group jump roping, we would catch frogs and caterpillars. I love to catch caterpillars. We'd catch lightning bugs in the summer and I'd put them in a jar and put holes in the top of the jar. And then in the bathroom, I'd draw my bath, turn off the lights, and I'd be like, "Candlelight bath, anybody?" But it would be lightning bugs in a jar.
Just trying to
that is
live
country.
For another...
I know, just like, why are you doing this to me?
You're killing me, lady.
One thing I did was, I don't know why. I think it was maybe because my dad was going to, he was getting his master's. Like, he was part-time getting his master's. And so when we would go and stay with him on the weekends, a lot of times we'd have to go to the library at Georgia State, which was a college in Georgia. And he would be working, and we would get to pick out books. And so that, I think, is what inspired me to create my own library. So I made little library cards and, like, little things so that people in the neighborhood could check out my books that I had.
That's adorable. I love that.
It didn't catch on as well as I would have liked, but I did. I mean, I think all those books are gone now, but I remember seeing them as an adult and like seeing the little cards I made and all this stuff. And like, this is the kind of thing that my mom would just be like, "Why are you doing that?" Like she was very like unimpressed and like underwhelmed and did not think it was interesting at all.
Little judgy.
Very judgy. She was just like, "That's weird. Why do you want to do that?" And I was like,
"You should be learning a trade."
Yeah, and we would make up games. It was a lot of good guys versus bad guys kind of things. And there were woods behind our house. We'd go play in the woods. And sometimes we would try to sort of fish in the little lake down the road, but we never caught anything. And then at my dad's, we would sometimes go to this place near where he lived called Emory. I forget what it was called, but it had like a little creek that went through it. And so what we would do is Hayden and I would make little leaf boats. So we'd get they had these good leaves and a stick, and you'd stick the stick through it, and then you'd try and make it like, tie like a little twig or something, tie something onto it so you'd sort of know yours and put it, and then we'd run down the length of the river. It was kind of long, this little creek, to see who's got there the fastest. And that was
cool.
Worlds of fun to us. Like now I'm like,
cool.
Wow, that is so quaint. So many times it was things like just being in places where we didn't particularly want to be. Like we'd go with my mother for her tennis practice or whatever, and it was this place called Pine Log Park. That was just this huge park that had tennis courts, but then also just tons of woods, and I guess like for hiking, I don't know. And it had creeks and stuff, and so many telephone poles and trees would be covered in this stuff called kudzu. Do y'all know what kudzu is? It's like an invasive vine.
Okay.
That's what I imagine.
You see a lot of them down south, and what would happen is the kudzu would just take over like trees or telephone poles, and they would basically start to look like other things. The way like how you could sometimes look at clouds and you're like, "Oh, that looks like a dinosaur," or whatever. And so many times we'd be like, you could quickly feel you were deep in the woods, but you really wouldn't be that far. And you would be like, oh no, they're after us. And you would imagine these kudzu creatures were coming, and we would always try to undam the little creeks in the thing or dam them. We would just, dealer's choice, which one you wanted to do that day. So yeah, it was like a lot of playing outside and I loved collecting acorn caps and mica. I loved to find little pieces of mica because I loved shiny things.
What's the mica? What is that? I don't know what that is.
It's like a type of rock, but it's not really a rock. It's like thin and it's layers and it kind of almost holographic.
Yes,
yeah.
I do know what that is, but I just called it a rock with shiny stuff in it. I didn't know it was mica.
And we'd eat so many honeysuckles and wild blackberries, and it was a cute, almost country-ish existence. But yeah, it was a lot of make our own fun. We did watch a lot of TV, though. I will say we did watch a ton of TV. It was that very typical Gen X thing of get out of the house, stay out till the street lights come on, don't go in the backyard. Sometimes we couldn't go in the backyard because our next door neighbor would put chicken shit to fertilize the backyard, and so it would stink so bad in the back. Or they would have gone deer hunting, and so they'd hang the deer upside down to bleed it. Okay. And there'd be deer carcasses and rabbit carcasses hanging upside down, and I would be like, I don't want to go back there. It's freaking me out.
Yeah. That's so cool. You said roller skating. I totally forgot about. In our garage, we roller skated around in circles, and it's not a garage, but we would roller skate in circles because it was all kind of
it was so flat.
Smooth,
yeah.
We did that kind of thing, and then you said, did you ever do any roller skating, Nate, as a kid?
No, but we did skateboarding. A lot of skateboarding.
I loved roller skating.
Did they have skate parks when we were kids?
Not yet. They were just starting to happen right as I was sort of growing out of it.
Well, my daddy had a skateboard, but it was really short compared to the ones the ones that became the big decks, and it was sort of plasticky and thin.
I had one of those too. It was about this long.
They were really totally different than the ones now.
They used to be the banana ones.
Yeah.
Right.
And you said something that it just made me think of something too. But when you said your library, did you ever do discarded books from the school or from a library where they were they would put on it would be discard, and then you would get the opportunity to get the books, and sometimes we would get the books and it would be a teacher's edition of math or of spelling, but it was none of the books that we used anymore.
Right.
But it was a teacher's edition, and we would play school.
We played so much school.
And the best part of that, and I guess I must have been fascinated with this, was that Mr. Miller, our music teacher, would be the guy that would call you to your bus route, and he would be in the cafeteria, and there was a little microphone that would go through the whole school, and he would say, bus routes 2, 8, 9, and 10 are here. Please walk to bus routes 2, 8, 9, and 10. And that was the biggest part of our school day was calling people to, and it was just me and Jason playing. So there weren't any real kids or anything. It was
we would use our stuffed animals as the children. My daddy would hear us play in school, and he would be like, it was kind of worrisome the way that you would scream at the children. He would be like, is this how teachers at your school talk? And I would always, in my classroom, I would name people that I knew as the children, but then I would also have someone named Bad Boy and Good Boy, and Bad Girl and Good Girl. And Bad Girl, I'd be like, good girl, very good. Bad girl, go to the office. Just someone to yell at.
That's insane.
We would also play a lot of Office. That was one that was really fun to play at my grandfather's house because he had this great roll top desk. And my step grandmother would give us papers and things and stamps and stuff so we could play Office. Yeah. And I'd be like, your 3 o'clock's here. Also, you've got to sign these in triplicate. I just loved that kind of stuff.
That's so great.
How about reading? How much time did you guys spend reading?
Oh.
Tons. Constant.
Not as much as I probably should have.
I stayed up so late reading.
I did not.
I read so much in 4th and 5th grade, like really just starting in 4th grade, like really throughout. But like my dad, the English teacher, at one point had to like make me go outside and play because I was in my room reading so much. But I wonder, I don't wonder, I'm certain that kids today spend hardly any time reading. Some do, I'm sure,
kids,
but most no.
Flynn is an avid reader and
cool.
loves, like, he read all the Harry Potter books. He's in the 5th book of another series that he likes even more. He just is he reads a lot. He also plays a lot of video games. He does a lot of sports. He's very well rounded. But at night, before bed, he reads a lot, and it's pretty impressive.
I say kids. I think just America spends very little time reading.
Sure, you're right.
I don't
sure
read
you're right.
anymore.
I did remember that there were like 3 books I remember as a kid that I loved. One was the Boxcar Children, so that was probably I was younger. And then there was another book called 4 books, The Silver Crown. I don't remember what it was about. There was another one called Escape into Daylight, which was about these 2 kids that were kidnapped and they had to escape, which was pretty good. I loved that book. And then there was another one called The Island of the Blue Dolphins.
I loved Island of the Blue Dolphin.
Sounds
I don't
familiar.
remember what it was about, but it was a girl.
Yeah, it was a girl, and it was Scott. The guy's name was like Scott something who wrote it, but I loved that book.
Odell. Is that right? Why do I know
think
that?
you're right.
Why
I
did
think
that
you're
pop
right.
in my brain?
Wow.
I think you're right. I loved like Where the Red Fern Grows and Bridge to Terabithia and
I never read any of those.
like what were the other big ones that I really liked? I'm trying to think.
I got really into the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I love the James Bond books. I read all the James Bond books, and the S.E. Hinton books. I read all the S.E.
Yeah, I
Hinton
loved
books.
those. And Judy Blume. I read every Judy Blume.
And, of course, Wired.
It's his book report on Wired.
Right, yeah.
In
I
6th grade.
I wish I
But
would.
that's, again, I guess maybe that's another topic. But talk about low-tech fun. I mean, it's hard to leave out the reading part because I did
True.
spend a lot of time reading.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and then you mentioned radio plays too, which was a thing we
I didn't even
would
talk
do.
about radio plays. That was like...
We would do so much recording of ourselves.
Yeah.
My favorite, I just have to share this because it really is my favorite, was my sister once with her friend did one, and it was all the different laughs. It was like, these are the names of the different types of laughs. And my favorite one, which I still remember, was The Dignified Sally J. Wagner. And it went like this. Ha, 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 ha. And I heard that, and I could not believe it. I was like, this is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. The Dignified Sally J. Wagner.
That's amazing. I didn't do like radio plays, but I did do like I'm a DJ, and I would
we
have
would do that
the
too.
records or like record the radio.
So in
I would
between
do that.
songs, you would
Yeah.
talk about it?
Like, that was Michael Jackson, and now here comes Huey Lewis, or something. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
We would do a whole news broadcast, the ABC team. That was our little theme music. We're the ABC team. We do a news broadcast, and we'd do like movie reviews and like a whole news segment. And then we'd also do like superhero, like Superman stories, where we would just like read the Superman stories, but then we would do the sound effects and like how like if there's a fire, we would crumple the paper up next to the microphone.
That's so cool.
That's fun. we
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
do that.
I love that. Yeah.
Foley artists.
Foley artist.
Oh, we have the boys are here.
Where are they?
Oh, there.
Comes one. There comes Jack.
There's Jack.
Uh-oh.
You didn't give me any instructions.
I said put headphones in.
This generation is supposed to be the generation that's good with tech.
I've never used this. This is not Zoom. That's the only thing I'm used to.
We have an audio issue and a video issue.
It's perfect.
It's just when I click on camera, it just tells me why cameras matter.
All right, I'm going to go, and he's in the other room.
He's talking right now. No,
But we can't hear him.
no, I can't hear him.
This is so perfect for the category or for topic.
I know. For low tech fun.
And here comes somebody.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, can you hear
Nice.
me on the AirPods?
Yeah, we can hear
Yeah.
you. We wanted to ask somebody from a different generation. So we have 2 of my sons. We have my oldest son, Jack, and my second oldest son, Hunter, here. They are both Generation Z.
And oddly enough, it's the opposite order as far as who your favorite son is.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Nate was saying we were talking about low-tech fun. So things that you did when you were kids, or maybe still do, that is not like on a screen or, involving a video game system or stuff like that. And I know that these two, they grew up for a time in New York City and then moved out to the suburbs. So maybe we'll start with Hunter over there. So Hunter, what are some things you did that were kind of like low-tech fun when you were little?
I mean, I know Jack remembers like when we had moved to Connecticut by this point, like we would play in the neighborhood every day with like, I don't know, sometimes as many as like 15, 20 kids, sometimes as few as like 3 to 5. But we'd play like basketball, front yard football, and like we also made up a bunch of games too.
Hunter, how old were you when you moved to Connecticut?
I was in second grade, so I would have been about like 8 or 9, maybe.
And Jack, you're 2 years older?
Yeah, close to like
a little more than a year.
One and a half.
Yeah. That's like me and my brother. I'm curious about, before you jump to Connecticut, I'm curious to know, and Jack, you were a little bit older in New York, but you were both old enough for memories. What did you have low-tech fun in New York City? Like, I want to know about the New York City kids.
The biggest thing that I remember that we weren't forced to do, that we just did by ourselves, was we would either play some form of baseball in our hallway or in the apartment, and we would do 2 versions of baseball. One was we would use a wiffle ball bat and a Harry Potter stuffed owl. Hedwig owl.
But how big was it?
It was like probably
small, right?
It was like like a almost a baseball size, and we would go into the hallway and do that.
This is in an apartment building,
and like just
right?
thin hallway.
I remember this apartment.
Yeah.
And hit with that and play with that somehow.
What was it called?
Base bowl.
Base what?
Bowel.
Bow as in owl?
As in owl.
Base owl.
As in your bowels.
And and that was always fun. But then sometimes we would get yelled at. The neighbors didn't like it, so we'd have to go inside, and we would play a similar game, but we would use our hands as the bat. And like back when he was in his punk era, he would have wristbands that he would wear, and we would use those as the ball.
Oh yeah,
and we would hit them with our hands. And for whatever reason, I just remember, or sometimes we'd use tiny little stuffed animals, but we would leave the window cracked open a little bit. So we would sometimes hit them, and they would go out the window and fall down to the street. So we'd have to go down and find them.
Would you go? Would you leave the apartment?
We would go with mom or whoever was there, but there were at least a couple times where the ball would go out the window. And
this was just you and Hunter doing this?
Yeah.
Do you remember that, Hunter?
Yeah, of course. I feel like I also remember in the hallway we were playing that game one time. We may have like smashed one of the lights in the hallway.
We would.
I think we just ran into the apartment after that.
Probably.
I didn't know about that.
That's the apartment's version of like, hey, you kids, get off my yard. I'm going to keep your ball, like all that. I'm just curious about the dynamic of New York to Connecticut, city kid to suburban kid. Would you count your town's a suburb, or is it just a little small town?
It's a small town.
Yeah, I'd say it's a suburb.
Were you happy for that move? Because it seems like that opened a world to you.
No, they're so mad about it. They'd still talk about it.
We hated it.
I hated it.
Why? Even though you got like a whole neighborhood of kids to play with all of a sudden?
I had everything. I was on the top of the world in New York. I was the coolest kid in 3rd grade.
Yeah.
And I lost it all.
He had a best friend.
Yeah.
Hunter had a best friend.
Oh my, okay, I didn't know this.
I mean, I remember from like last summer or whenever it was y'all were here, y'all were talking about it then. Like, worst thing that ever happened to us was having to leave New York City at age 7.
So there was no trade-off of like, now we get to go just walk outside our front door and play outside with a bunch of kids. It's something you could not do in New York City, right?
No, well that was fun because it was mainly just us doing, and then maybe we would go to the park with whoever our friends were at the time, but then we could go outside and play games literally from when we got home from school to like when it got dark all day with a group of kids.
I think you might want to start adjusting your perspective a little bit.
I don't know.
Thanks, Nate. Thank you, Nate.
Well, tell us about your Connecticut fun. Tell about your Connecticut fun, your neighborhood fun.
Okay. one of the games I remember that we loved, like we played all the time. It was called Survive the Plague, which it was basically like tag mixed with the TV show Survivor, which a bunch of us were fans of. And so it was just like tag, except when you got tagged, you would join the taggers. And yeah, we just incorporated Survivor into that by just like voting kids off as the game progressed.
Wait, were these kids the kids that you had tagged?
No, if everyone would after every game, you would, if you won that round, you would have immunity for that round, and then we would get in a group and vote off, and it was always just, we would always form alliances when we were at base or whatever, and it was always the same kids that would get voted off first.
Who'd you vote off?
I don't even remember. Just the
So you would vote off the kids who were less who were less athletic, or the kids you just didn't like?
Probably both, but they were lumped into the same.
A little bit
group
of both,
usually.
yeah.
And if they got voted off, was it just like, bye?
Well, they
go
would
home?
They would start the next round as a tagger.
Oh,
So you would.
Oh yeah.
Steve, you got voted off. What are you doing here? Go, go, Steve. Don't watch us. You can't watch us.
We can't be everything for you, Steve.
the tribe has spoken.
Right. Well, yeah. But they would have the worst. It wasn't fun, I'm sure, because you would just have to tag.
You're
people
just the
whole time,
tagger,
but-
yeah. Being constantly being it. That is, it's also weirdly prescient that you did survive the plague, and then 10 years later it was COVID.
There was a plague.
You basically I'm gonna say you brought on those.
Spoke it into existence.
Yes,
I'm saying.
you did.
I mean, our favorite neighborhood game was probably just classic football. And we would just absolutely tear up our front yard or our neighbor's front yard.
Just the grass would come up in mud underneath, or what?
Well, yeah, we'd be playing
so many
full
people?
tackle football.
Yeah, and you get
In
snow.
on pavement too. Yeah, that was when we got to hit really hard.
Yeah.
In the snow? Oh yeah, I guess it makes sense.
Kids would go flying into thorn bushes on the side of the yard. It was
What?
good. Yeah, it would happen.
Yeah.
So I've sent my brother to the hospital twice playing football. And there's another kid, I think my brother sent a neighborhood kid to the hospital once.
He broke his collarbone playing.
I broke my
neighborhood
collarbone
football.
playing football.
It's still.
Yeah.
It's
There were no
jacked.
injuries like that. I don't think anyone really got.
It's
I mean,
awful.
We played hard though. You kids don't understand.
You don't know what it's like. But there were certainly kids that definitely got hurt and would cry.
well, yeah, they
right?
would, yeah.
We wouldn't play Connecticut hard. We'd play Colorado hard. It's a different thing. It's a different thing.
Totally different.
There's
That-
less oxygen, so their bones are more porous too. So they would break more.
Very
easily.
brittle. One of the things when I was a kid was I had a club, or if you were Nate, you were part of an imaginary gang. So we had a club that we had, and there was a president, vice president, etc. Did you do anything like that with any of your friends?
Well, in elementary school, there was a big club kind of thing that we had called Mojo World, which I was I was the king of Mojo World, which you took me away from when we moved, by the way.
Oh wait,
So-
this was in New York.
in New York, yeah, back in New York.
I don't. What is Mojo World?
If you hadn't moved him for being the king of Mojo World, imagine what he would be today.
Yeah, who
the
knows?
emperor or something.
Well, it was a co-run monarchy, if that can even work. But because it was me, Devin. There was a group of. I guess I wasn't the king, but I was on the council of the leaders of Mojo World, and it was a world that everybody wanted to be a part of. We call it Mojo World, but it was because we had this imaginary world. I don't even really remember it. I just remember that everyone wanted to be.
Everybody wanted in.
Everyone wanted in. Yeah.
Hunter,
we would
do you know?
pick-
Do you know Mojo World?
He's probably heard of
I
it.
know of it. I was never a part of it because it was.
It was a grade.
Kinda
It was a
thing.
grade specific.
It doesn't
thing.
make sense because you said it was a monarchy, which would indicate that you would have to be born into it. I'm guessing, right?
Well-
and so, why would he not be one of an heir? Or,
It was a grade
something?
specific thing. I said monarchy because there were kings, but there were multiple kings, so you can call it what you want to.
What's
It
that
must have
would be
been like
called?
sort of like the triumvirates in Rome, and that sort of
yeah.
It was definitely authoritarian, whatever it was.
democratic republic of some kind, something.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Well, let me ask you guys this: what would be your balance of between outside play and because you had I don't know, you tell me. You guys had video games and such, right? You grew up playing video games. And you were probably, when you were young, little kids, you had Nintendo, yes? Mm-hmm. Or Sega?
Yeah.
Sega?
No.
No Sega, but you
Never
also
had
like
that,
didn't
no.
it start with like the Nintendo DS or something like that? Is that what it started with?
We had a DS. I think we probably had the Wii.
Oh, we
basically
did have the
same
Wii.
time.
That's right.
You
Yeah,
had
yeah,
the
yeah.
Wii.
I think one of the first things we had was like it was something that was like built into a Darth Vader head-shaped controller.
Yeah.
And it was like you would
Yeah.
plug that in, and that was some game.
Yeah.
What would be the balance between video, like screen time, and outside making stuff up?
There was no balance because we would only get 30 minutes of video game time a day, which
Here we go.
Good.
Here we go.
it doesn't make any sense. What can you do in 30 minutes?
You are
video
so much
game
better
time.
of a person today because your dad used to make
Okay, so
better roles.
grievance one is moving out of New York City and
Yep.
ruining your life. Grievance two, way
30
too
minutes.
limited.
30 minutes of
How
video
can you
game time a
possibly
day.
accomplish anything? How
Do you
can
want-
you crush the noobs
Do you want to
and
and the sweats?
hone the squeakers and punish the sweats? I just learned all these
Yeah.
words today, so I got to use them.
Do you want to tell them about your Star Wars figures?
Oh right, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So there was I would have a bunch of Star Wars action figures, and I remember this very, very vividly. I might have dreamed it, but I think I remember walking into the kitchen one night in New York. So I was probably, I don't know, 5 or 6. I walked into the kitchen at night after I was supposed to be in bed, and Mom and Dad were cutting off all the guns and all the lightsabers and all the weapons that all the characters had, which otherwise they're just regular people. And they cut them all off, and those were my action figures that I had to play with.
So they weren't. We didn't cut the lightsabers off.
You did.
But
You did.
No.
There are Luke Skywalkers with just like this, holding like this with nothing.
And just so you know,
I'm
like,
so mad.
just so you know, like, they weren't like the figures that we know, Nate and Ashley.
They're like
where
Phantom Menace figures or
They
something.
were kind of like little mini. They were like
Cartoony.
Oh,
cartoony
really small.
looking. They were about this big, and they were kind of
Like-
plastic shapes and figures. And they would have like the blasters, which is what we called them. We did not call them guns or lasers. They were intended to be called blasters in our household, and we would lop the blasters off, and they were none the wiser.
Well, clearly they were the wiser.
I side with Jack on this one. Most everything I've been on your side with, Matt.
Yeah.
Jack's
don't-
wrong. Jack's right. You had no business doing
No.
it.
Well, I
no.
guess you wanted the action to be like, use your words, not your blasters. And these action figures could really get into some deep conversations.
With their
That's
fists
action.
like this. I know you guys made films. You made films, but putting that aside because that's a little bit more high tech. Did you ever improv like a bad guy, good guy kind of situation? And how far was the planning in that?
One thing I remember when we still lived in New York was when we would like pretend to be Jedis by just like wrapping tape around our like arms and legs because it looked like the wrap.
Yeah, I remember that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wait, was it tape or was it
We were
toilet
like-
paper?
No, it was duct tape. Or no, it was Scotch tape.
I think it was
Scotch
packing
We just-
tape or Scotch tape.
my
yeah,
gosh, that's funny.
We would use like just pens as like the hilts of a lightsaber.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. But would you like improv situations? Would you like...
I don't
You know.
think it was ever like me good guy, Jack bad guy. I think we were always on like the same team fighting imaginary villains.
Did y'all get along? Or did you get in fights? Because my brother and I used to get in like fist fights.
We would get along. It was pretty standard, I would say. We would get along, but also get into fights. Nothing
Yeah.
crazy.
I'd say you mostly got along,
One of
though.
we definitely got along most of the time, pretty much all the time. But one thing I do remember was one time we were just hanging out. I don't remember what we were doing, but Jack like told me to come over to him, and he was like, "Yo, check this out. I got to show you this move. Don't worry, I like won't actually do it on you. It won't hurt." And then he just like grabs my head and just smashes it into his knee.
What?
Like just like busted my forehead.
Well, it was a
on
good
his
move.
knee.
It worked.
It hurt him, though.
I know.
Let me
but-
guess. This happened when you were in Connecticut.
Yes, it did.
That would have
Yes.
never happened
Never
in New
happened.
York. You would have been too stimulated by the energy of the
The
city.
king of Mojo would have never felt the need to do that. That is some fantastic playtime sharing.
I know. I'll be honest. I'm a little surprised at how much low tech fun y'all have.
Yeah.
I really, in my mind, was like, oh, it's going to be all video games.
Oh, there have been plenty of those. Believe
Sure.
me.
30 minutes a day.
But we played video games too.
Yeah. That's probably how much I played when I was a kid, 30 minutes a day.
Yeah.
How much TV did you get to watch as kids?
Not a lot. I mean,
No?
I remember, because all my friends nowadays have all these memories of watching SpongeBob or like Drake and Josh, which I don't know if you know. Those are like the shows that my friends remember, and I don't think we ever were allowed to watch those shows because we never watched them. Yeah.
But we did
Wouldn't
allow
allow them to watch SpongeBob? It's like,
No. We were like, it's got to be Family Guy or nothing.
It was Little Einsteins,
Yeah, Little Einstein.
Sesame Street.
Sesame Street paid for that hat you're wearing.
That's
right.
Shirt on your back.
Do you know how many years of this Matt had to do to buy that hat?
Yeah. Wait a minute. You bought that hat.
No, with your money.
That's true.
I want to ask you this. Did you play any, you definitely sure don't know the MASH game. Do you know what's it called?
Right.
The cootie
That's
game?
what it
The
was.
cootie catcher. It's
little
like a
piece of-
paper thing.
And
It's like a
it's like-
paper
I feel like
thing that
I
you
probably-
fold the paper.
Well, I mean, yes, that, but that was-
5, 6.
I never knew how to make those, but I feel
Okay.
like I've met
We would
kids
do-
who
yeah.
would do those.
So those have survived.
I had a friend who had an older sister who did that MASH game, where you draw like a loop on the whiteboard or something.
Yeah. We were talking about that.
That
earlier.
survived as well.
That's
All right.
funny.
Cool.
Did you do like a piece of paper on a table and?
Oh,
Did you do the football game?
football thing? Yeah.
Okay,
I
you
don't.
did that,
Yeah,
right?
that. But like not a lot. I mean, but that was a thing.
That was a thing, and you did that though, right? You guys did
Yeah,
that.
definitely.
Well, Hunter, Jack, thank you very much for coming and talking to us. Now, I think there are some commonalities, I would say, between Gen X
Yeah.
and Gen Z. I think there are some things
Yeah.
that you guys did do.
I was surprised.
It
Some
didn't
of them
sound
I
much
remember.
different at all.
Yeah, it's pretty similar, which is interesting. I almost want to talk to a boomer.
You
Just
gotta
to
get
see, like,
Flynn
what it
and
was like,
Keaton.
but I don't know.
Yeah, you got to get somebody younger, I think.
Somebody younger.
We just hit the cutoff.
Keaton's never
interesting.
kneed Flynn in the face, I bet, before.
You know what? That's a good point.
It was so good to see y'all.
Yeah,
to see you
thank you
guys.
both for doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to see you too.
All right.
Disagree.
Thanks, fellas.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I did know that moving from New York to Connecticut was like, that's hard. You're like in 3rd grade, 2nd grade, and you're suddenly like, you've got a group of friends, and then you're just like picked up and moved somewhere else, and you got to make new friends. And I think even though it was really rough, they did transition really. They did a good job, and they have really close
It's
friends
remarkable
here, too.
how much they still talk about it, though, because I remember them from whenever y'all were here in the summer.
This was your problem. This was your issue. You only moved once.
Oh,
If you had moved several times, they wouldn't dwell on the
He
one.
changed schools like every year.
Yeah. Well, I just went to like a different school every 2 years until I was
why didn't you bring that up?
I didn't think of it.
At some point, they'll understand, like, yeah, you can't, like, to live the life they had in Connecticut, they would have had nothing close to it in New York City because it's so expensive.
It's all trade-offs, though.
yeah, but I mean, it's like,
But they got to do a little of both.
But a really funny thing when your boys were talking about Star Wars figures was like sort of our era of Star Wars figures.
I forgot all about that.
I did too.
My mom's best friend had 2 sons who were the same age as me and Hayden. And so a lot of times we would spend time over their house. And so we would bring our Barbies and they would have their Tonka truck and their G.I. Joe and their Star Wars guys. And they would go on dates. And it was exciting because we only had the one Ken. And so it would be like, wow. But it would be so funny because it would be like Barbie is so big and then like Luke Skywalker is so tiny. And then Darth Vader would come in and ruin the date. It was like so many worlds like smashing together in really funny ways.
All right, well, we should pick our next topic.
Yay.
Shaking it up. And then I'm gonna pick one out. Pop culture bonanza. Big culture moments like the Challenger explosion, Cold War fears, and how that impacted you and us.
Cool. That's yours,
That's-
actually.
That one?
That's
Pop
probably mine, yeah.
culture
Yeah.
Bonanza.
Cool. That's a good
culture
topic.
Come on to the next one. That's it.
Good
Yeah,
topic.
I'll try to do a good. Y'all both did good little prepared statements at the top of yours. I did not last time, but this time I'll do more prepared.
All right.
You do
Whatever
you,
like.
boo.
Whatever you like.
This was really fun. This
Yeah.
one was so fun.
Special thanks to my sons Jack and Hunter for being on the show today.
Solve for Gen X is mixed and edited by Nate Starkey.
The theme song was written by Nate Starkey and Matt Vogel and performed by the Mighty Weaklings.
Our podcast art was created by Dave Holteen at DaveHolteenDesign.com.
You can find Solve for Gen X wherever you listen to podcasts.
And it's also available to watch on YouTube.
Just search Solve for Gen X.
If you're so inclined, please rate and review our show. It really helps our visibility.
Or whatever.
Whatever.
Solve for Gen X is a Welcome Matt and Married Nate and Ashley production.
If they